And there's another notoriously sober band, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. They don't do drugs at all. You had a brush with them early on when they were changing their name from Wicked Lester to Kiss. You almost got in that band, or you
Well,
had to try out. But yeah, I mean, things worked out for the best apparently. But what were your impressions of those early stages of Kiss?
my impressions were that now here I am straight, and I was trying to figure out what to do with myself. So it's June of '72, and I am babysitting for a lawyer in my building named Peter Thole, who's a very famous entertainment lawyer. And in an elevator conversation, he says to me, "Are you looking to join a band?" Because he heard me play guitar out of the window, because that's what we do in Manhattan. We don't have garages. We don't have garage bands. We have roof bands in Manhattan. You know, I used to open the window in my building, and I used to like play, you know, like really loud. I mean, to the point where this is like a little side story, but you know, this is a funny podcast, so this is a side story. First big amplifier, June of '68, in my room, windmilling like crazy with a Marshall stack, windows open, my mother's out. I'm smoking so much weed, it looks like Chernobyl in my room. I'm fucking wasted. I'm blasting. I'm like, you know, I live on the Upper West Side. I'm blasting, you know. This goes on for about an hour. And then the door, I'm hearing the door knock, and oh God, who is it? Could it be the super? I don't know. And I open the door thinking it's the cops, and it's this woman. She goes, "You son of a bitch, do you have any fucking idea how loud you are? I'm trying to work on my thesis for my PhD and I can't concentrate." And I looked at her and I said, "I don't recognize you. What apartment are you in?" She goes, "What apartment? I live on 87th and Columbus Avenue," which is
right. Oh, spectacular.
That's the greatest ab I ever had in my life. So anyway, so I'm trying to find a band, and he says I represent a guy who's a producer who's working with a band called Wicked Lester, and through that I auditioned for them, and the audition lasted a couple of weeks. And I never heard back, and that was it. However, I joined a hippie cover band that summer and played Allman Brothers tunes, and that September I still didn't have a band, and then the Dolls started playing at the Mercer Arts Center. So this is a big deal for Dolls fans, right? It's a big deal. So the Dolls were the house band at the Mercer Arts Center. So what happens is I come home as a hippie, and I decide I get an album, a David Bowie album, a Lou Reed album, Martha Hoople album. I see this shagged haircut, blonde hair, and I said, "Well, that's going to be the new John. John, the old John Segal is dead. I'm going to be a glitter guy, whatever that means." I cut my hair, dye it blonde, and friends of mine know the Dolls, and I knew the Dolls. I knew Johnny because he was a drug addict from Central Park, and I used to probably deal to him and his buddy. So I kind of knew them. And they said, "Well, the Dolls, man, the Dolls. So I go down to see the Dolls, except now I'm glitter. You know, I'm like blonde haired, I'm shag haircut, you know, this is great. And I walk in to see the Dolls, and like, they were awful. Like they just, you know, if they didn't look the way
I've
they
always
did,
heard about them. Yeah.
they'd be laughed out of any fucking, they were awful. They were just an awful band. I mean, I can't lie about it. People say, "Oh, the Dolls, legendary my ass." They were awful. They just couldn't play, you know. Now, and I'm watching this scene, which was Warholian, you know, in its presentation, all these Warhol downtown freaks. And I'm looking at the Dolls, at how bad they are. And I'm thinking, so this is the end result of 5 years of the Fillmore East existence, where we had Jimi Hendrix and the Jefferson Airplane and Janis Joplin and Jeff Beck and Joe Cocker and 10 Years After, and, you know, all these great artists, Crosby, Stills and Nash and the Who. And, you know, and what do we have to show for it? 5 years of evolution. And this is what we have, this fucking caveman bullshit of bands that can't even fucking play their way out of a paper bag. And that's supposed to be the end result of all this greatness. And I couldn't accept it. And around that time, I saw an ad for the paper, and it was Gene and Paul still advertising. And I called up, and at that time they said, "No, we just got a guy." And his name is Ace, Paul Fraley. And they invited me down to their loft in October. And I went to see them in their loft, and they knew exactly who they were and what they wanted to be and how to present it. You know, they were going to be like a British rock band like Slade, and they were going to have Marshall amplifiers, and they kind of knew. They got it. They really got it. And I went, wow, that's the way I want to sound. This Doll shit, you know, it doesn't. And I went to see the Dolls every day. I mean, I saw the Dolls tons of times because I knew them, and I went to see them a lot. They were great once. I will give this to them. They played a December show, 1972, at the newly reopened Fillmore East. And ironically enough, the producer of that show was our movie director, Andy Horn.
Oh.
And I went to that show, and it was Eric and the Magic Tramps, Teenage Lust, and the Dolls. And the Dolls were good. And I thought to myself, well, goddamn, I'm glad they're good, because I don't want them to keep sucking. You know, they put on a really good show. It was a riot at the Fillmore. I mean, they invited kids on stage. It was a real rock and roll debacle. And it was kind of interesting. But then I saw them 20 times after that, and they were just the worst, you know. But Kiss just knew who they were. So yes, I didn't make it with Kiss, but it didn't bother me. I wasn't good enough at the time. I say that in the book. How much more honest can you possibly say? I don't like sugarcoat it. Don't go, they're not for me. I wasn't good enough.